The arrogant command. The skies above Earth seemed calm, but tension rippled across the planet. Every screen, every speaker, and every broadcast platform was hijacked. The image of a tall, blue-skinned alien with glowing yellow eyes filled the airwaves. Clad in golden armor, he radiated arrogance and power. Behind him, the insignia of the Galactic Empire loomed, cold and threatening. "This is Grand Commander Varrock of the Galactic Empire," the alien declared, his voice sharp and commanding. "Earth, your existence has been deemed insignificant. You will surrender to the Empire within 24 hours or face total destruction. Resistance will be futile." The broadcast cut out as suddenly as it had begun, leaving silence in its wake. The people of Earth were stunned. Panic gripped some, while others stood frozen, unable to process the magnitude of the threat. Was this the end of their world? Could humanity, with all its conflicts and divisions, stand against such an advanced force? In a hidden underground facility, far from the panic-stricken cities, a group of leaders and scientists gathered. The room buzzed with hurried conversations and urgent voices. Commander Nathan Blake, a tall man with sharp features and a calm but determined demeanor, stood at the center. His military uniform bore the marks of countless battles, but this was unlike anything he had faced before. "We don't have time to waste," Blake said, his voice cutting through the noise. "The Empire thinks we're weak. They see us as easy prey. Let's prove them wrong." Around the table, his team exchanged uncertain looks. Dr. Aisha Patel, a brilliant scientist with a sharp mind, spoke up. "We've been preparing for this moment. The Armada is ready, Commander. But if we act too soon, they'll discover it before we can strike." Blake nodded. "We can't afford hesitation. If they believe we're defenseless, they'll get careless. That's our chance to hit them where it hurts." Meanwhile, in the cities above, news channels scrambled to make sense of the alien message. Speculation ran wild. Was surrender the only option? Could Earth's leaders negotiate with a force as powerful as the Galactic Empire? Protesters filled the streets, demanding answers, while others stocked supplies, preparing for the worst. Blake's voice echoed in the war room. "Our priority is survival. The Empire is arrogant, but they've never faced humans before. They don't know what we're capable of." His words carried a quiet confidence that seemed to calm the room, if only slightly. Dr. Patel stepped forward, her tablet glowing with schematics of a fleet that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. "These ships are more advanced than anything the Empire expects. Reverse engineered from alien tech and powered by innovations they've never seen. We call it the Armada." A hologram filled the room, showing sleek, dark ships with cloaking devices and weapons that could pierce the thickest armor. The team watched in awe as the projection demonstrated the Armada's capabilities. Blake turned to his second-in-command, Captain Amelia Lee, a fiery and loyal officer. "Captain, mobilize the fleet. We need to keep it hidden until the last moment. Every second counts." Captain Lee saluted, her expression determined. "Understood, sir. I'll ensure the Armada is ready." But even as plans took shape, doubts lingered. Blake could see it in the eyes of his team. The Galactic Empire was massive, spanning thousands of star systems. Humanity was just one small planet. Did they truly have a chance? Blake's gaze swept across the room. "I know what you're thinking. We're outnumbered, outgunned. But the Empire doesn't understand one thing, our resolve. They think we'll bow to their demands. They're wrong." The countdown began. Across Earth, factories and hidden bases churned to life, preparing weapons, ships, and defenses. Engineers worked around the clock, soldiers trained with a new sense of urgency, and scientists fine-tuned the Armada's systems. The clock ticked, and tension mounted. As the 24-hour deadline approached, the Empire's ships began to appear on the edges of Earth's solar system. Massive, imposing vessels with glowing engines and deadly weapon systems. Their presence alone was a reminder of the power they wielded. Blake stood in front of a large screen, watching the incoming fleet. His jaw tightened. "They're here to intimidate us," he said quietly. "Let them. They'll regret underestimating humanity." Back on Earth, citizens gathered around their screens once more, waiting for a response from their leaders. Fear and hope battled in their hearts. Would Earth surrender, or would it fight back against impossible odds? Blake turned to his team, his voice steady and unwavering. "Prepare the Armada. We're about to give the Galactic Empire a lesson they'll never forget." The final seconds of the countdown ticked away, and the screen flashed to life again. Grand Commander Varrock reappeared, his expression smug. "Earth," he said, "your time is up. Do you surrender?" In that moment, Blake stepped into the light, his image projected across the galaxy. His response was simple, but it sent a shiver down the spine of every human watching. "We do not surrender. We fight." The declaration sparked cheers on Earth, while Varrock's smug expression faltered for the first time. Blake's voice carried on, resolute and unyielding. "To all humanity, stand strong. The Empire doesn't know what's coming." The hook was set. The world held its breath as the battle for Earth began. Secrets of the Armada. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, hidden from prying alien eyes, was the heart of humanity's last hope. The Armada, a fleet of starships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While most humans believed they were defenseless, a few had been preparing for this moment for decades. The secret was kept so tightly that even most world leaders had been unaware of its full scale. Commander Blake stood in the central command room, surrounded by holographic projections of sleek black starships. These ships were crafted with technology the Empire could not have predicted. The room buzzed with activity as technicians, engineers, and scientists worked tirelessly to ensure every system was operational. Dr. Aisha Patel, the brilliant mind behind much of the Armada's technology, tapped her tablet and brought up a detailed hologram of the fleet. "Commander, the Armada consists of 400 stealth-equipped vessels. Each ship has adaptive shields, quantum cloaking, and plasma weaponry capable of piercing the hull of an Empire dreadnought." Blake studied the display, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. "And the drones?" he asked, his voice steady but urgent. Dr. Patel smiled, a rare glimmer of pride breaking through her usual seriousness. "The drones are ready. They operate on a neural network that adapts in real time. We've programmed them to exploit weaknesses in Empire ship designs." Blake nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good. We'll need every advantage." As they prepared, a scout ship from the Empire drifted dangerously close to Earth's orbit. Its glowing blue engines pulsed rhythmically as it scanned the surface, looking for signs of resistance. It was only a matter of time before it found something. Blake turned to Captain Amelia Lee, his ever-reliable second-in-command. "Captain, we need to keep that scout ship blind. Scramble our satellites and disrupt its sensors." Lee saluted. "Yes, sir. We'll make sure they see nothing but static." As Lee left to carry out the orders, Dr. Patel stepped closer to Blake. "Commander," she said quietly, "there's something you should see." She led him to a private chamber where a smaller, more advanced hologram flickered to life. It showed a massive ship, even larger than Earth's flagship, Resolute. The ship was sleek and alien in design, but its core was unmistakably human innovation. "This is the Aegis," Patel said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's our trump card. Equipped with a gravimetric cannon capable of disabling an entire fleet with one shot. But it's not ready." Blake frowned. "How long?" 3 days, Patel admitted. "But if we rush it, there's a risk it could destabilize." Blake clenched his fists, his mind racing. 3 days was too long. The Empire would be at Earth's doorstep in less than 24 hours. He couldn't wait for the Aegis to be fully operational, but the thought of unleashing it prematurely was dangerous. If it failed, humanity's last hope would crumble. "Get it ready," he said firmly. "We may not have 3 days, but we'll use whatever we can. If the Empire comes, we won't go down without a fight." Meanwhile, in the depths of the Armada's shipyards, pilots and crew were being briefed. Among them was Lieutenant Sarah Vega, a young but exceptionally skilled pilot. She had earned her reputation flying dangerous missions in hostile conditions, and now she stood before Earth's First Fleet, preparing to lead her squadron into a battle they might not return from. "You've all heard the stories," she said, her voice strong despite the fear she felt. "The Empire thinks we're weak. They think we'll roll over and surrender. They're wrong. This is our chance to show the galaxy what humanity is made of." The pilots cheered, but their resolve was tempered by the enormity of the task ahead. They knew they were going up against an enemy that had crushed countless civilizations, but for Sarah, that only fueled her determination. Back in the command room, Blake watched the fleet's readiness reports come in. The Armada was nearly prepared, but the Empire's movements were becoming increasingly bold. More ships appeared on the edges of the solar system, their energy signatures glowing like ominous stars. "Commander," a voice called out. It was Lee, her face pale. "The scout ship has detected a faint energy spike near one of our relay stations. They're sending a signal back to their fleet." Blake's heart sank. If the Empire learned about the Armada before they were ready, Earth would lose the element of surprise. He turned to Patil. "Can we jam the signal?" She hesitated, not without revealing more of our systems. "It's a gamble." Blake didn't blink. "Do it. If we lose the advantage now, there won't be a fight to win." Patil nodded and began typing furiously on her tablet. Moments later, a wave of static flooded the Empire Scout's communications. The ship hesitated, its glowing engines flickering as it tried to recalibrate. But it was too late. The scout ship's signal had partially gone through. Somewhere, far away, the Empire's fleet would have noticed the disturbance. They would know Earth wasn't as helpless as they had believed. Blake stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. "They'll come faster now," he said quietly. "We have to be ready." The room fell silent, every person present feeling the weight of his words. The secret of the Armada was out, and the battle for Earth was about to begin. The Empire strikes first. The first strike came without warning. The Empire's scout ship, though partially jammed, had relayed just enough information to prompt an aggressive response. A shimmering wave of light appeared on Earth's orbital sensors, Empire assault ships exiting hyperspace in a formation that screamed precision and power. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to destroy. In the hidden command center, alarms blared, and a holographic display lit up with red alerts. Commander Blake stood motionless, staring at the projection of enemy ships. The screen highlighted their rapid approach toward one of Earth's orbital stations, Atlas, a civilian research hub with limited defenses. "They're targeting Atlas," Captain Lee reported, her voice sharp. "Thousands of civilians on board." Blake's jaw tightened. "Scramble the Resolute and its escorts. We have to buy them time." "Commander," Dr. Patil interrupted, "if we deploy now, we risk exposing the Armada's full position. The Empire could send reinforcements before we're ready." Blake hesitated for a fraction of a second, the weight of the decision pressing on his shoulders. But he didn't have the luxury of waiting. "If we don't act, those people are dead. We'll deal with the consequences later. Launch the intercept team now." The Resolute, Earth's flagship, broke through its concealed launch bay. Its dark, angular hull reflected the cold emptiness of space as it led a squadron of smaller escort ships. These vessels had been built for speed and power, but this would be their first real test. On board the Resolute, Lieutenant Sarah Vega strapped into her fighter cockpit. Her squadron, Shadow Wing, prepared to launch. "Listen up, Shadows," she said over the comms, her voice calm but commanding. "We're the first line of defense. Keep the Empire's fighters off the Resolute and protect the civilians at all costs." Her squadron echoed their affirmations as their ships blasted out of the hangar, streaking toward the Empire's approaching fleet. The battle over Atlas. The Empire's assault ships wasted no time. As they closed in on Atlas, their weapons fired with brutal precision. Beams of energy sliced through the station's outer hull, rupturing oxygen tanks and shattering observation domes. Civilians scrambled for shelter, their panicked voices echoing across emergency channels. The Resolute arrived just in time, its massive cannons lighting up the dark void with bursts of plasma. The first Empire ship to fire on Atlas was obliterated in an instant, its debris scattering into the blackness of space. "Direct hit," a tactical officer reported. "Don't celebrate yet," Blake muttered under his breath, watching the holograms intently. More Empire ships swarmed in, their numbers overwhelming. Above Atlas, Shadow Wing engaged the enemy's fighters. Sarah Vega's ship weaved through the chaos, her reflexes sharp and unyielding. She locked onto an enemy fighter tailing one of her squad mates and fired a precise missile. The explosion lit up her cockpit. "Good shot, Shadow Leader," a voice crackled in her earpiece. "Stay focused," she replied, her tone unwavering. "They're not giving us any room to breathe." Despite Earth's fierce defense, the Empire's assault ships pressed forward. One of them launched a volley of torpedoes aimed directly at Atlas. Blake watched the display, his heart sinking. The orbital station's shields were flickering, struggling to hold. "Can we intercept those torpedoes?" Blake demanded. "Not in time," Captain Lee replied, frustration evident in her voice. Dr. Patel's voice cut through the tension. "Commander, there's another option. We can remotely activate the Atlas station's experimental shield array. It's untested and might fail, but it's better than nothing." Blake didn't hesitate. "Do it." Patel's fingers flew across her tablet, inputting override codes. The station's shield generator hummed to life, projecting a brilliant golden barrier. The torpedoes slammed into the shield, creating a blinding explosion. When the light faded, Atlas was still intact, but barely. A desperate gamble. The Empire's fleet wasn't done. Their assault ships regrouped, and a new formation emerged, one designed to strike directly at the Resolute. "Commander, they're targeting us now," Captain Lee warned. Blake's mind raced. The Resolute was powerful, but not invincible. Order the escorts to tighten the defensive perimeter. We need to hold them off. The Empire's ships unleash a relentless barrage. The Resolute's shields flickered under the strain, and sparks flew across the command room as systems overloaded. Crew members shouted over the chaos, but Blake remained calm, his eyes locked on the battle unfolding before him. "Divert power to the forward shields," he commanded. "We can't let them break through." Outside, Sarah Vega and her squadron fought valiantly. Her ship twisted and rolled as she dodged enemy fire, her focus razor-sharp. "Commander Blake, we need reinforcements out here," she called over the comms. "They're on their way," Blake replied. "Hold your position." But reinforcements wouldn't arrive in time. One of the Empire's assault ships broke through the defensive line, its weapons charging for a final devastating blow against the Resolute. Inside the command room, the tension was palpable. Captain Lee turned to Blake, her voice grim. "We can't take another hit like that." Blake stared at the holographic display, his mind calculating the odds. "We don't have to," he said. "Fire the decoy drones." Patel's eyes widened. "But they're not ready." "Fire them," Blake interrupted. "It's our only chance." Seconds later, a swarm of small, glowing drones launched from the Resolute. They darted toward the Empire's assault ship, creating a dazzling light display. The Empire's weapons locked onto the decoys, mistaking them for real ships. "Now," Blake shouted. The Resolute fired its main cannon, a blinding beam of energy that tore through the enemy vessel. The Empire ship exploded, its debris scattering across the battlefield. A hollow victory. Cheers erupted in the command room, but Blake didn't share in the celebration. He knew this was only the beginning. The Empire's fleet was vast, and this skirmish was just a fraction of their power. As the Resolute regrouped with the remaining defenders, Blake turned to his team. "The Empire underestimated us today, but they'll come back stronger. We need to be ready. On the holographic display, a new energy signature appeared, a massive Empire dreadnought entering the system. Blake's expression hardened, and they just sent the real fight. The battle for Earth was far from over. The unstoppable Armada. The arrival of the Empire's dreadnought sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The massive vessel dwarfed every other ship, its spiked hull bristling with weaponry that gleamed menacingly against the backdrop of stars. Its engines glowed with a haunting blue light, exuding power that could crush entire fleets. The name Dominion's Wrath was etched in alien glyphs along its side, a name feared across the galaxy. In the Resolute's command room, the atmosphere was tense. Commander Blake stared at the holographic projection of the dreadnought, its size and firepower outclassing Earth's entire fleet. "Commander, we're detecting multiple energy surges from the dreadnought," Captain Lee reported, her voice laced with urgency. "They're preparing their main cannon." Blake's mind raced. The Dominion's Wrath was designed for planetary destruction, and Earth's fragile orbital defenses wouldn't survive a single shot. "Redirect all ships to form a defensive barrier. We can't let them get a clear shot at the planet." As orders were relayed, Dr. Patel stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "The Armada is equipped with countermeasures, but we need to deploy the drones and cloak ships in sync to overwhelm their targeting systems." Blake nodded. "Do it. This is what we've been preparing for." The first engagement. The Armada surged into action. Stealth-equipped ships emerged from their hidden positions, their dark hulls blending seamlessly with the void of space. Swarms of advanced drones darted toward the dreadnought, moving in erratic patterns to confuse its tracking systems. The Empire's smaller escort ships tried to intercept them, but the drones were too fast. Inside her fighter, Lieutenant Sarah Vega led her squadron straight into the chaos. "Shadow Wing, stay tight. Focus fire on their weapon systems. We can't let them charge that cannon." Her voice carried over the comms as her ship spiraled through enemy fire. Plasma bursts lit up the battlefield, and her squadron danced through the destruction like shadows in the night. Sarah's targeting system locked onto one of the dreadnought's smaller turrets, and she fired a missile. The explosion sent debris spiraling into space. The dreadnought fires. Despite Earth's efforts, the Dominion's Wrath completed its charge. Its main cannon unleashed a blinding beam of energy, cutting through the void with terrifying precision. The beam struck one of Earth's orbital defense stations, shattering it in an instant. The shockwave rippled outward, disabling smaller ships caught in its path. In the command room of the Resolute, Blake's expression darkened. "That's just a taste of what they can do," he said grimly. "We need to hit them harder." Patel's voice crackled over the intercom. "Commander, we have one option. The gravimetric pulse cannon aboard the Resolute. It's not as powerful as the dreadnought's main weapon, but if we get close enough, we can disable their systems." "Close enough?" Lee asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean within their kill zone?" Blake's voice was firm. "It's a risk we have to take. Captain Lee, prepare the Resolute for a full frontal assault." A daring maneuver. As the Resolute surged forward, Earth's Armada provided cover. The cloaked ships reappeared, ambushing the Empire's escorts. Drones swarmed the dreadnought's surface, targeting its exposed sensors and communication relays. The massive ship groaned under the onslaught, but its shields held strong. Inside the dreadnought, Grand Commander Varrock watched the battle unfold. His golden armor shimmered under the red glow of emergency lights as his officers shouted status updates. "These humans are more resourceful than I expected," he muttered. "But their defiance will end here." The dreadnought's turrets rotated, locking onto the Resolute as it closed the distance. Plasma bolts rained down, and the Resolute's shields flickered dangerously. Sparks flew across the command room, but Blake stood resolute. "Divert all power to forward shields," he ordered. "We have to make it through." The Resolute pushed forward, its cannons firing relentlessly. One by one, the dreadnought's escort ships fell, leaving it vulnerable. But as the Resolute approached the dreadnought's firing range, a new wave of enemy fighters emerged. An unexpected sacrifice. Sarah Vega's squadron intercepted the fighters, but the numbers were overwhelming. Her wingmates fought valiantly, their ships weaving through enemy formations, but one by one, they fell. "Shadow Leader, we're outnumbered," one of her pilots shouted. Sarah clenched her teeth. "Hold the line. The Resolute needs us." As the dreadnought's cannons turned toward the Resolute, Sarah made a split-second decision. She pushed her ship into a full-throttle dive, heading straight for one of the dreadnought's primary turrets. Her targeting system locked on, and she armed her ship's remaining missiles. "Sarah, what are you doing?" A voice crackled in her comms. "No time to argue," she replied. "Tell the commander I'll see him on the other side." Her ship collided with the turret, detonating in a massive explosion. The dreadnought's main cannon veered off course, firing into empty space. Sarah's sacrifice had bought the Resolute the time it needed. The turning point. Inside the Resolute, the gravimetric pulse cannon reached full charge. Blake gave the order. "Fire." A pulse of concentrated energy erupted from the Resolute, striking the dreadnought's core. The Dominion's wrath groaned as its systems overloaded. Lights flickered, and explosions rippled across its hull. But the dreadnought wasn't defeated yet. It began to charge its secondary weapons, aiming for Earth's surface. Blake turned to his team, his expression fierce. "We're not done. Prepare for a final assault." Cliffhanger. The Resolute and the Armada regrouped for one last push. The dreadnought was damaged but still deadly, and Earth's forces were stretched to their limits. As the battle reached its peak, a new energy signature appeared on the sensors, something massive, heading straight for the battlefield. Blake's heart sank. What now? The cost of resistance. The battlefield was a symphony of chaos. The once pristine void of space was littered with debris, burning wreckage, and the faint glimmer of extinguished lives. But there was no time to mourn. The Empire's dreadnought, Dominion's wrath, remained a towering behemoth, battered but defiant. Earth's fleet was running out of resources, ships, and most importantly, time. In the Resolute's command room, Commander Blake gripped the edge of the tactical table. The holographic projection showed the battlefield in grim detail. Earth's armada was faltering, its numbers dwindling. The Dominion's wrath, though wounded, had begun charging its secondary weapons. "Commander," Captain Lee said, her voice edged with urgency, "we've lost contact with Shadow Wing. The fighters are gone." Blake's jaw tightened. Sarah Vega's heroic sacrifice weighed heavily on his heart, but he couldn't let grief cloud his judgment. "We don't stop," he said firmly. "We can't let that dreadnought fire again." Dr. Patel's voice cut through the tension. "Commander, the Resolute is barely holding together. If we press forward, we might not make it back." Blake's gaze was cold and steady. "We weren't planning on retreating anyway." The desperate push. As Earth's remaining ships regrouped, a new energy signature appeared on the tactical display. It was massive, glowing with a brightness that rivaled the Dominion's wrath. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the screen. "What is that?" Captain Lee asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Patel's eyes widened as the reading stabilized. "It's the Aegis." The room erupted in whispers. The Aegis was Earth's experimental warship, equipped with a gravimetric superweapon that could theoretically disable an entire fleet. But it wasn't supposed to be operational for another 3 days. A voice crackled over the comms, heavy with static but unmistakable. "This is Captain Arjun Das, commanding the Aegis. Apologies for the delay, Commander. We brought her online early." Blake allowed himself a faint smile. "Better late than never, Captain. Can you get into firing range?" Das's voice was grim. "We'll try, but the Aegis isn't stable. If we fire the gravimetric weapon, it could destroy us." Blake's smile faded. "Do what you have to. We'll cover you." The battle intensifies. The Aegis surged onto the battlefield, its sleek, cutting-edge design cutting through the chaos like a blade. The Resolute and the remaining Armada ships formed a protective perimeter, drawing fire away from the new arrival. The Dominion's wrath turned its attention to the Aegis, recognizing the threat. Its turrets swiveled, unleashing a relentless barrage of plasma fire. The Aegis's shields shimmered under the onslaught, but cracks were beginning to show. Inside the Resolute, Blake issued rapid orders. Redirect all fire to their weapon systems. We need to give the Aegis a clear shot. Captain Lee relayed the commands, and Earth's fleet responded with renewed determination. Stealth ships targeted the Dreadnought's turrets, while drones swarmed its surface, delivering payloads of explosive charges. The Resolute pushed forward, absorbing enemy fire to shield the Aegis. The turning point. On board the Aegis, Captain Das and his crew worked frantically to stabilize the gravimetric superweapon. The ship's reactor groaned under the strain, and warning lights flashed across the control panels. "Captain," a young engineer shouted, "the core is overheating. If we fire now, the feedback could destroy us." Das's voice was calm but resolute. "If we don't fire, Earth is finished. Begin the final sequence." As the Aegis's weapon charged, the Dominion's wrath unleashed a desperate counterattack. A squadron of Empire fighters broke through Earth's defensive lines, heading straight for the Aegis. In the Resolute, Blake saw the threat. Captain Lee launched the remaining drones. "We can't let those fighters through." "But Commander," Lee protested, "those drones are our last line of defense." Blake's voice was unwavering. "Then we'll make sure they count. Launch them." The drones shot out of the Resolute like a swarm of angry hornets, intercepting the Empire's fighters in a dazzling display of light and fire. The Aegis held its position, its weapon nearing full charge. The sacrifice. As the Dominion's wrath prepared to fire its secondary cannon, a small damaged ship broke away from Earth's fleet. It was the Daring Star, piloted by a lone volunteer, a retired pilot named Elias Kane. His voice crackled over the comms. "Commander Blake, this is Kane. I've got one last trick up my sleeve." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Kane, what are you doing?" "Something stupid," Kane replied with a chuckle. "But maybe just stupid enough to work." The Daring Star accelerated toward the Dreadnought, its engines blazing with an intensity that should have been impossible for a ship that size. Kane had overloaded his reactor, turning his ship into a massive projectile. "Tell my kids I didn't go down without a fight," Kane said softly, just before the Daring Star collided with the Dominion's wrath. The explosion was colossal, tearing through the Dreadnought's side and disabling its secondary cannon. The gravimetric strike. With the Dominion's wrath crippled, Captain Das gave the order. "Fire the gravimetric cannon." The Aegis unleashed its superweapon, a pulse of pure energy that rippled across the battlefield. The Dominion's wrath shuddered as its systems failed, its massive frame drifting lifelessly in the void. Cheers erupted across Earth's fleet, but the victory was bittersweet. The Aegis had sustained critical damage from the feedback, and its crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. In the command room of the Resolute, Blake leaned heavily on the tactical table. The cost had been high, too high. But for now, Earth had survived. "We're not done yet," he said quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of what was to come. "The Empire will return, and when they do, we'll be ready." Earth's bold gamble. The battlefield was eerily quiet in the aftermath of the gravimetric strike. The Empire's Dreadnought, Dominion's wrath, drifted lifelessly in the void, its once imposing presence reduced to a colossal wreck. But the silence was short-lived. Sensors aboard Earth's surviving ships began blaring warnings. A new energy surge was detected. An entire fleet of Empire reinforcements had emerged from hyperspace. In the Resolute's command room, Commander Blake stared at the tactical display. Dozens of Empire warships blinked into existence, forming a vengeful wall of destruction. This was no longer just a battle. It was a full-scale invasion. Captain Lee's voice broke the silence. "Commander, we've lost too much of the Armada. We can't take another wave." Blake clenched his fists, his mind racing. "We don't need to destroy them," he said slowly, an idea forming. "We just need to make them retreat." Dr. Patel, still working frantically to stabilize the Aegis from the command room, looked up. "Commander, what are you thinking?" Blake turned to her. "The gravimetric pulse. If we overload the Aegis's reactor and detonate it, the resulting shockwave could destabilize the entire fleet." Patel's face paled. "You're talking about using the Aegis as a bomb. That would destroy the ship and everyone on board." Blake nodded grimly. "I know, but if we don't act now, Earth is finished." A desperate decision. On board the Aegis, Captain Arjandas listened to Blake's plan through a secure channel. His expression was solemn as he surveyed his bridge crew. They had worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational, and now they were being asked to sacrifice everything. "You've all done your duty," Daz said, addressing his crew. "No one signed up for this. I'll pilot the Aegis alone if I have to." One of his officers, a young woman with determination in her eyes, stepped forward. "With all due respect, Captain, we're not going anywhere. If this is how it ends, we'll end it together." Daz smiled faintly, a rare moment of warmth in the cold reality of war. "Very well. Let's make it count." The final stand. As the Aegis began its deadly course toward the Empire fleet, the remaining ships of the Armada launched one last desperate assault to buy it time. The Resolute led the charge, its damaged hull glowing as it fired volley after volley at the advancing enemy. "Push them back," Blake commanded, his voice ringing with determination. "Every second we hold the line brings us closer to victory." In her fighter, Lieutenant Sarah Vega's surviving wingmate, Lieutenant Karen Holt, rallied what few pilots remained. "Shadow Wing may be gone," he said over the comms, "but we'll honor their sacrifice. Let's clear a path for the Aegis." The remaining fighters engaged the enemy with renewed ferocity, weaving through a storm of plasma fire to target the Empire's flanking ships. Though outnumbered, they fought with a tenacity that stunned their foes. The overload. Inside the Aegis, alarms blared as the ship's reactor approached critical mass. Captain Daz monitored the countdown, his hand steady despite the chaos. "We're in position," he said over the comms. "Blake, you better have a good speech ready when this is over." Blake's voice came through, quiet but resolute. "You're doing what no one else could, Arjun. Earth will remember." The Aegis's crew braced for impact as the reactor reached its breaking point. The ship's hull began to glow, energy rippling outward in violent waves. The Empire fleet opened fire, trying to destroy the ship before it could detonate, but it was too late. The detonation. The Aegis exploded in a blinding flash, unleashing a gravimetric shockwave that tore through the Empire's formation. Smaller ships were obliterated instantly, while larger vessels were hurled backward, their systems overloaded. The Dominion's wrath was shattered further, its remains scattered into the void. The Empire's fleet, battered and broken, began to retreat, unable to sustain the fight. On Earth's side, the Resolute and the remaining ships barely escaped the blast radius. The command room erupted in cheers, but Blake remained silent, his gaze fixed on the fading light of the Aegis. "They did it," Lee said softly, her voice filled with awe. "They actually did it." The aftermath. The Empire's retreat was a temporary victory, but the cost was staggering. Earth's Armada was reduced to a shadow of its former strength, and the loss of the Aegis and its crew weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. In a global broadcast, Blake addressed humanity. His face was worn, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Today, we stood against an enemy that sought to crush us. We paid a terrible price, but we showed the galaxy that Earth will not bow. We will rebuild, and we will be ready when they return." Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's defiance began to spread. The Empire's reputation as an unstoppable force had been shattered, and whispers of rebellion grew among the oppressed worlds. Humanity had ignited a spark that could change the galaxy forever. The battle was over, But the war was far from won. Blake turned to Captain Lee and Dr. Puddle. "We need to prepare. The Empire will come back with everything they have. And we'll be waiting," Paddle replied, her voice firm. Humanity's triumph. The battlefield was quiet now, but the scars of the war remained. The wreckage of ships, both human and alien, drifted in orbit, a testament to the ferocity of the battle. Earth had survived, but survival came at a heavy price. The loss of the Aegis and its crew weighed heavily on every surviving soldier and leader. In the Resolute's command room, Commander Blake stood silently, watching the tactical display. The Empire's fleet had retreated, but it wouldn't be long before they regrouped. This was only a temporary reprieve. "They'll come back," Captain Lee said softly, standing beside him. "And next time, they'll bring everything." Blake nodded. "I know. But this time, they'll face something they didn't expect. A united humanity. The spark of hope." As Earth's leaders gathered for an emergency summit, the mood was somber but determined. For the first time in decades, nations set aside their differences, realizing that their survival depended on unity. The broadcast of Earth's resistance had reached far beyond the planet. Across the galaxy, oppressed civilizations took notice. "They're calling us the Flame of Defiance," Dr. Paddle said, showing Blake a holographic report. "Rebellions are breaking out on Empire-controlled worlds. They're inspired by what we did here." Blake's expression remained serious. "Inspiration won't be enough. We need to build alliances. If we can unite the oppressed systems, the Empire won't stand a chance." Patel nodded. "We have something they don't. Hope. That's more powerful than any weapon." Rebuilding the Armada. Earth's shipyards buzzed with activity as engineers worked around the clock to repair the Armada. With the loss of the Aegis, the fleet was critically weakened, but humanity's ingenuity refused to be extinguished. New designs emerged, incorporating lessons from the battle. One of the most ambitious projects was the Aegis II, a successor to the lost warship. This time, it would be equipped with fail-safes and a reactor designed for sustained use rather than a single strike. Patil led the project, her passion fueled by the memory of those who had sacrificed their lives. "We'll honor their legacy," she said quietly, her hands trembling as she sketched the new design. "This ship will be the key to ending the Empire's reign." The Empire's response. Deep within the Empire's core systems, Grand Commander Varrock stood before the Emperor. The throne room was vast and cold, the Emperor's figure shrouded in shadow. The Grand Commander knelt, his armor dented from the battle. "You failed," the Emperor's voice boomed, a low, menacing rumble. A single planet defied the might of the Empire. Varrock's head bowed lower. "Earth has proven more resourceful than anticipated, but their defiance will not last. I will personally lead the next invasion." The Emperor leaned forward, his golden eyes glowing in the darkness. "No, you will not. Earth is no longer just a planet. It is a symbol. Destroying it is not enough. We must crush the idea of rebellion." The Emperor turned to his advisors. "Deploy the Exterminatus Protocol. Earth will serve as an example." The final stand. As news of the Empire's Exterminatus fleet spread, panic gripped Earth. The protocol was infamous, a fleet designed for total planetary annihilation, leaving no survivors. Blake gathered his team in the war room. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "They're bringing their full force. But we won't go down without a fight." Earth's armada, bolstered by newly allied ships from rebel systems, prepared for the ultimate confrontation. The galactic resistance had formed, and while their fleet was still smaller than the Empire's, their unity and determination gave them an edge. "We've faced impossible odds before," Sarah Vega's surviving wingmate, Lieutenant Kieran Holt, said in a broadcast to the fleet. "And we've won. This is our moment to show the galaxy that freedom is worth fighting for." The climactic battle. The Exterminatus fleet arrived, blotting out the stars with its sheer size. The battle that followed was the largest in human history. The Armada's new ships, powered by innovative strategies and tech, disrupted the Empire's formations. Earth's resistance fighters targeted the Exterminatus flagship, Eternal Dominion, a massive ship carrying the superweapon meant to annihilate the planet. Blake led the Resolute straight into the heart of the enemy fleet, drawing their fire and creating an opening for Patel's experimental weapon, a gravimetric disruptor capable of destabilizing the Eternal Dominion's core. "This is our only shot," Patel said over the comms. "We have to get close enough to deploy it." Blake didn't hesitate. "Then let's make it happen." The Resolute and its escorts broke through the enemy lines, their shields flickering under the relentless assault. As they approached the Eternal Dominion, Patel launched the disruptor. The device attached to the enemy flagship's hull, and moments later, the ship's core began to collapse. The Empire falls. The destruction of the Eternal Dominion sent shockwaves through the Empire's fleet. Without their flagship, their coordination faltered, and the combined forces of Earth and the galactic resistance pressed the attack. The Empire's ships retreated, their morale shattered. Across the galaxy, rebel forces rose up, inspired by Earth's victory. The symbol of the Empire, their invincibility, was broken. A new beginning. As the battle ended, Earth's fleet returned home to a hero's welcome. But the cost of victory was clear. The losses were staggering, and the path ahead was uncertain. In a quiet moment, Blake stood with Patel and Lee, overlooking the rebuilding efforts on Earth. "We've won the battle," Blake said, "but the war isn't over." Patel smiled faintly. "No, but now we have a chance. A real chance." Blake looked to the stars, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "The galaxy will never forget what happened here. Humanity isn't just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for a future."